Today we are going to discuss another perspective in understanding the self, and for today we are going to talk about the spiritual self, and along the way we're also going to talk about religion and the various views about the soul or the human being from different religions, and how do religiosity differ with spirituality, and what are the different perspectives in understanding the spiritual self. So let us begin. First, it's important for you to know that even in psychology, not just in this discussion, even in other fields, we view spirituality as something different, and it's not always the same with religiosity. Okay, because there are people who can be spiritual without becoming religious. And what do we mean by saying that? By definition, spirituality is defined as relating to or affecting the human spirit or soul as opposed to material or physical things. Okay, so remember our discussion about the Eastern and Western thought. So I want you to remember what you learned about the self from the Eastern thought. Okay, so basically, spirituality is not just about believing in a certain deity, but it's also about being free of materialistic and physical desires. Hence, a spiritual person is someone who has a greater connection with himself, with others, and with the environment, or in some philosophies, they would call that connection with the cosmos. Okay? And some philosophies would believe that a person is connected to himself, to others, as well as to the environment, while some would suggest that we're also connected with God. Okay, and in order for us to live a healthy life, we must be connected healthily to all of these. And we must balance our connection with ourselves, with others, with the world, and with God in a healthy manner. Okay, and we should not be driven, or we should not desire materialistic or physical things, because those desires are for temporary things, and we cannot bring these material things with us the moment that we die. Other than that, another perspective in spirituality says that spirituality is about having a connection with the divine being, even if you're not following a certain religion. So there are people like that who have a special connection with God, even though they don't go to a service, they don't go to a mass, or they don't follow the prescribed procedures of a certain religion. Okay? And my challenge to you is this: I hope that you can find people who are not just religious but also spiritual, and ask them how can they describe their relationship with either with a god, with their god, with their belief, okay, with their philosophy, or with the nature. Because spirituality is not just a relationship with God, it can also be a relationship with your philosophy, or with belief, or with your morals, or with values. On the other hand, when we say religiosity, and you are more familiar with religiosity than spirituality, when we say religiosity, it's about believing in a god or a group of gods and consciously adhering to the beliefs of his or her religion. So, in other words, in order for you to be religious, you have certain rules to follow, certain prescriptions to follow. This may be the do's and don'ts of your religion. Like, for example, in your religion, what if you're not allowed to work on Saturdays because Saturday is a holy day? Then, in order for you to become religious, then the you must honor the beliefs of the religion that you belong to, and in doing so, that is your way of being faithful to God, and that is your way of being obedient as well, not just to God, but to the beliefs of your religion. Okay, and but the common ground is that both spirituality and religiosity talks about relationship with the divine being, only that spiritual people may have their own ways of relating to God, that wherein they do not strictly follow a certain religion. Okay? And various religions have their own way of relating to a god or to a deity. Hence, we have different beliefs of what we should do in order for us to be faithful, or in order for us to follow the will of God. Okay? Now, one more thing is that according to research, the approach of religion is sometimes about emphasizing the do's and don'ts. So they talk about sin, guilt, and punishment. Okay, especially for some religions. That's why people adhere strictly to the beliefs of that certain religion. Okay, well, some religion are more strict than others. It depends on the norm or your culture. Now, why is spirituality important? So don't just think of religiosity. You also need to be spiritual. So it's very hard actually to define what spiritual is or what constitutes spirituality. But in broad terms, it's about being connected to a certain divine being or being connected to a moral or to a divine code. Or say, for example, you have a mission or a quest, or another way of being spiritual is by connected to nature. Okay? And when we lack this certain connection, sometimes, according to existential psychology, we feel what we call meaninglessness or existential vacuum. Or in layman's term, you feel some sort of existential crisis. Like you think, what is my purpose here in the world? So spirituality is also about finding your purpose, and that may or may not be related to a god or to a deity. Okay? And according to existential psychology, meaninglessness is a factor that explains anxiety, depression, and other mental health concerns. That's why it's important for us mental health professionals, especially those who believe in existentialism, to allow people to understand that death is inevitable. Hence, while they're still living, they must make the most out of their life. And we also help individuals to move on through their grief. Grief is a natural process, especially if someone close to you dies. But it's no longer normal if you have been grieving for a number of years. Okay, and because of that grief, you're no longer able to work, or you're no longer able to fulfill your role in the society, or you have become disabled psychologically. Hence, we allow people to realize that eventually life will end, and it might be best for us to accept that life will end eventually. Okay? Hence, the moment that people realize that life has an end, they will take more responsibility over their actions. They tend to make better choices. Okay? And one of the most important point of existentialism is choice and responsibility. Meaning, if you don't like who you are right now, you're the only one who can change yourself. You cannot say that you're like that because of your parents, because they force you to be like that, but rather, existentialists would say that it is your life, it is your choice, and whatever your choice is, you need to be responsible about it. So after this therapy session, you can choose to be good or you can choose to be bad. Just remember that if you choose to be bad, then you must be responsible over your choices. Okay, so we want people to become more aware and become more mindful that, and we don't want them to fear death, but accept that life will eventually end and view death not as the end of life, but the completion of life. Okay? And guess what? In existentialism, it is believed that the awareness of death does not bring fear, but rather it it somehow triggers a mission that you know that life is limited, hence you will make the most out of your life to fulfill a certain mission. Another thing I learned from existential psychology or existentialism or philosophy of existentialism is that existence precedes essence. And essence is a word that you will hear a lot from spirituality. And what is the meaning of existence precedes essence? It means that when we say existence, that is existing in the world. On the other hand, when we say essence, that is about the meaning of life. So the meaning of the phrase existence precedes essence is that you need to be born first before you know your purpose. Because you're not Jesus Christ who has a purpose before he was born. You're a normal human being. Okay? And in order for you to and in order for you to know that purpose, first you must recognize that you are existing in the world. Okay? So we help people to become more spiritual and have a better connection with themselves, with others, with God, or with nature. Some existentialists do not even believe in a God. Okay, that's why not all existentialists endorse a connection with God. But nonetheless, spiritual practices are associated with optimal health and psychological well-being. Okay, and there are various ways to help you to become more spiritual. Say, for example, remember our discussion in Eastern thought when I talk about Nikan therapy, wherein we do not highlight materialism, but rather we highlight gratitude towards other people. How do you relate to others? What have they done for you? What you have done for them? And how do you affect each other? Okay, and there are a lot of practices, okay, in psychology that can help a person become more spiritual. Here are some mental health practices that I want you to learn about from this discussion. Okay, but from other perspectives, they would call this contemplative practices, but nonetheless, they have psychological benefits. Okay, so contemplative practices can be understood as a method of deep concentration, deep and understanding, and insight. It cultivates awareness and compassion. Okay, and here are some examples like mindfulness. When we say mindfulness, that is an activity wherein you become more conscious of the here and now, because there are a lot of people who would be stuck in the past or who would be worried about the future, hence they don't live in the present. With mindfulness, we want to bring the person to the present, and how do we do that? We want the person to become aware of his or her surrounding. We make the person close his or her eyes, and then we allow him to know the sensations he or she may be feeling. Like, is that anger? Is that guilt? Is that happiness? Is that sadness? Or simply, we can focus on external sounds like, can you hear the sound of the fan, the sound of the people around you? Or can you feel my hand touching yours? Okay? And mindfulness is all about becoming more aware, and believe it or not, even if you think that it's so shallow, it's not really a shallow intervention, because people who have undergone mindfulness intervention tend to pay more attention, they have longer patience, and they get more information when they are listening to others. Okay, they pay more attention, they are more attentive. For example, there are studies that will show wherein healthcare workers, doctors, nurses, when they undergo mindfulness interventions, their patients end up becoming more satisfied with their service because they are more careful and they attend more to the patient, meaning they are more emphatic and they try to put themselves into the shoes of the patient. That's why they they deliver better services. Other than that, you can also engage in prayer, and by Catholic definition, this is the elevation of heart and soul to God. Okay, and a lot of people will feel positive emotions when they pray, but here's a suggestion from psychology, especially from positive psychology. Try to compose a prayer that focuses on gratitude or thankfulness. Okay, I know someone who taught his kids how to pray at night without asking for anything, but rather they just pray for they just say thank you for whatever they received that day, and that's a gratitude prayer. And engaging in gratitude activities is very helpful, especially in making us less materialistic. And I guess you know already the negative effects of materialism from our previous discussion called economic or material self. And lastly, another, if you're not someone who engages in a lot of prayer and you don't think mindfulness is for you, then you can engage in journaling. And with journaling, what you're doing is that you have a notebook or a diary wherein you list down your experiences for that day. And eventually, at the end of the week, you can look at those at your journal and know what you have learned for that week. And journaling is important, especially for those who go into therapy for mental health concerns, because with journaling, they become more aware of the behaviors that they were not aware before. Say, for example, a person with problems in perfectionism and self-defeating behavior, we can teach that person to, to enter journal entries that talks about becoming perfectionistic and trying to overcome perfectionism. And by journaling, they become more aware of their progress throughout the therapy. On the other hand, we're done with spirituality. When we say religion, religion is defined as belief and worship of a superhuman controlling power, especially a god or a group of gods. Okay, and when we say that you follow a certain religion, then you follow a particular system of faith and worship, and every religion have their own way of worshiping a certain deity. And there are cultural factors to take into account, okay? And they have their own ways of glorifying the deity that they worship, which may be, which is, which can also be connected to their cultural background, okay? And later on, we will learn about the various types of religions. And here are the four dimensions of religion. So for every religion, these four can be observed. So the first would be belief. So every religion have their own belief. So do you believe in one God? Do you believe in different gods? Do you believe in certain ideas or values? What is it that you endorse? Do you endorse gratitude? Do you endorse forgiveness? Do you endorse cooperation with other people? Okay, so there are a lot of beliefs, ideas, and values that we have that were shared to us by the religion that we follow. Okay, and these beliefs can be ideas like how do we see the world? Is the world a gift from God? Is it a gift from spirits? Okay, etc. Okay, these beliefs may be positive or negative. See, for example, there might be certain religion who believe that being homosexual is a sin, and there are religions that are very strict with their beliefs to the point that it's become a dogma. Hence, it will be uncomfortable for people to continue following such religion. Therefore, they would prefer not following that religion anymore or changing their religion. Other than that, there are also other beliefs about, for example, back then it was believed that mental illness is caused by possession of the devil or evil spirits. That's why people who were mentally ill during the Dark Ages were either tortured or killed. Okay? And that's an idea or a belief that we do not want to endorse, especially nowadays. Next, every religion has their own ritual. When we say ritual, these are repeated gestures or activities such as prayers or mantras. That may be meditation, that may be prayer, that may be a Sunday service, that may be rosary, etc. So we do engage in a lot of rituals, sacraments or ceremonies, christening, confirmation, coming of age. Okay, marriage is a common ritual from various religions. And after that, religion also highlights spiritual experience. So with every religion, there's a feeling of immediate connection with the higher being. However, the type of connection that we have towards the higher being may differ with respect to the religion that we belong to. For example, in Catholicism, we are allowed to call God our Father, but that may not be the case in other religion. Their God may be addressed as a God, but not necessarily a father or a mother to them. Okay? And there are different ways of relating to various deities in various religions. And lastly, a religion allows us to have unique social forms of community because we believe in the same religion, we are united in a single community called church. There are various churches in the world. Again, and these different churches and religions have their own beliefs about God, about their rituals, about people, and and people who share the same beliefs gather in a location called the church. Here are the generic classifications of religions. So first we have what we call polytheism, wherein in polytheism you believe in multiple gods, such as in Hinduism, ancient Greece, and in ancient Rome. For example, in ancient Greece, they do believe that if you're sick, then perhaps you are being punished by the gods. Hence, you must make an offering in order for you to please the god. And that's their ancient medicine, like getting saliva from a dog, getting the skin of a snake, okay, because that's their belief um until eventually Hippocrates came in as the father of modern medicine, and because of him we viewed medicine differently. It's no being ill is no longer about being punished, but rather a person is ill because of biological reasons and he or she needs to be healed with biological means. Other than that, there's also what we call monotheism, which is a belief in a single God. For example, Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. And there are also religions that do not believe in a deity. For example, Buddhism and Taoism, and even not believing in a god, which is atheism. Okay, and atheism, Buddhism, and Taoism, they don't believe in a single deity. But I would say that in Buddhism and Taoism, they believe that their religion is not really a religion, but they would most of them would say it's a way of life or following teachings. Okay, that's what I would normally hear from people who follow these beliefs, such as Buddhism. They would say that they do not really consider it as a religion, but rather it's a way of life, and it's about a living a certain morality, and pursuing a greater goodness. Okay, and we also have what we call animism, which is believing that non-human beings are gods or deities, such as animals, plants, and the natural world. Okay, and this was seen in indigenous worship, also in Shinto. Okay, before the Philippines was colonized by Spain, we have a religion back then, and we have not yet adapted Christianity, and we're also one of those who believe in non-human beings as deities. During the pre-colonial Philippines, we have what we call religious leaders known as the Babaylans. They are also a medium. They are the way of communicating to the deities or to the gods. And you know what? They were considered as the first psychologists in the Philippines. Why? Because back then, if you're mentally ill, it is believed that it's because you are being punished by a god. That's why you are ill or mentally ill. Hence, what they do is that to remove the illness or to remove the punishment, what they do is they offer offerings to a god through the babaylan. Okay, or in other places, a babaylan is also referred to as Catalonans. Babaylans are usually females, but there are some babaylans who are males. Okay, and that's their important role in the society back then. Our ancestors believed that souls can exist outside the body and that they continue to exist even after death and become multo or ghosts. Okay? Okay, so here is how we have conceptualized the soul in various cultures and languages of the Philippines, because language is, for me, it's the mirror or it's the gateway in understanding the culture. So first, let's speak about Dungan. So Dungan is believed as a life force or an energy or an entity, okay, that is not physical but rather ethereal, and it has a will of its own, and then it resides in the human body. That's why we are alive. It provides essence to life. However, Dungan differs with the Western concept of the soul because it's believed that the Dungan can temporarily leave the body. For example, when you are asleep. And when the Dungan returns back to your body, that's when you become conscious. Okay? Other than that, another way to understand the soul is with the word ginhawa, which refers either to breath or breathe, the verb breathing. Okay? And ginhawa is responsible for the beat of the heart. Okay? It is also believed in some other accounts that the ginhawa may be affected by foreign elements. For example, we do believe here in the Philippines that whenever we are sick, traditional medicine would say that there are elements in your body, like, for example, there's air in your body that's affecting your ginhawa or your soul. That's why in order for you to get well, we should remove that from your body, the foreign element. And traditionally, it was referred, the way of removing these elements from the body has been referred to as magnetic removal. Okay? But in layman's term, according to my sources, magnetic removal is massage. Okay? So that's why Filipinos like getting a massage whenever we are not feeling well, mainly because of the traditional beliefs. And not all of us are aware of this. That's why I'm talking about this. That's the reason why we like massage or the traditional hilot whenever we are not feeling well. Other than that, we also have the kaluluwa, or also known as kalag. And the ginhawa is believed to either, in some accounts, it's either in the chest or in the stomach. But but the kaluluwa is believed to be in the head or in the mind. Okay? And then kaluluwa is associated with the wisdom. And other than that, kaluluwa in some accounts is defined as the soul of the dead. Hence, you pray for the kaluluwa. Some would say that if the person is still living, the soul is not supposed to be called as kaluluwa, but rather it should be called kakambal, the Tagalog word for the twin. Okay, so it is viewed in the Philippines as the soul is like a twin, or the soul is like someone who is with us. I remember when I was a child, some would say that your shadow is your soul because it is always with you. Okay, those are the traditional beliefs about the soul. And going back to the idea that the kaluluwa was believed to be in the head, once again, it was related to mental illness, because here in the Philippines, whenever someone is mentally ill, we believe that there's something wrong with the head or the mind. Okay? That's why it was believed that a person is who is mentally ill is someone who has problem in the mind, because it was believed that the kaluluwa resides in the head and there may be something wrong with the head. That's why the person is mentally ill. Okay? So here are some traditional definitions, or here are some indigenous understanding of what the soul is and the different words that we use for the soul. Now let's talk about the rituals that we have. Since we have various religions, we also have various rituals. And here are the various types of rituals. First, we have what we call imitative rituals, which are rituals that are patterned after a myth, or the ritual repeats the myth. For example, during New Year's Day, what we do is that we set up fireworks so that evil spirits would be driven away. Okay, and we do that in order for us to repeat certain aspects of the myth and follow what the myth says or that we should do. Other than that, we also have what we call negative rituals, and these negative rituals focus on the rules of prohibition, or the don'ts. What should we not do in certain situations? For example, if you are if you are in a silent retreat, then you are not allowed to talk with each other, because the focus in a silent retreat is for you to become connected with yourself and with nature. We also have what we call sacrificial rituals, which is the earliest form of religion. And like what I told you earlier, this is important in the pre-colonial Philippines, wherein we sacrifice something to the gods. And these sacrifices can be a human being, can be an animal, can be food crops, or it can also be an object. Okay, and sometimes they are destroyed by burning, dismembering, cutting into smaller pieces, eating, or by burying it. Other than that, we also have what we call life crisis rituals, which are traditions of one mode or stage of life into another. Say, for example, there are cultures wherein if a baby dies, the father is the one who should bury the baby. Okay, and that's something that is related to life. Okay, to end this discussion, let me talk about sorcery or witchcraft that are common in Filipino folklore. And the first is what we call barang, which is conducted by a mambabarang, and barang talks about malignant sorcery that usually targets a person. And the difference between barang and kulam is that in barang, the mambabarang makes use of destructive insects, specifically carnivorous beetles. On the other hand, when we say kulam, this is more related to voodoo or witchcraft, which uses black magic or spells on the victim. And because of this kulam, a person may experience difficulty concentrating, lack of sleep, loss of appetite, accidents, and other unexplained events. And if you experience kulam, it was believed that the person who can beat the kulam or the curse is an albularyo or a mananambal. And the root word of mananambal is tambal, which refers to medicine in Visayan culture. And Tambalanan is a hospital. So a mananambal is someone who heals, who is a traditional healer. Okay? And it was believed back then that if there are supernatural causes to what you feel or to your illness, then you can only be healed by an albularyo or a mananambal. However, I would like to use this opportunity to stress to you that, especially that this is very prominent in our country, that we should not think that mental illness is a curse and it's not caused by sorcery or witchcraft, but rather let's think of mental illness as a real illness that can be biological, psychological, and it can be cured with medicine, it can be cured with therapy, or we can help people to have better quality of life. Again, it's not a product of a curse. And let us not hate on people who has mental illnesses because they are not cursed, but rather they have a real condition and they need our support. So that is it for this discussion. I do hope that you learned a lot about our culture and you have a lot of realizations about our spirituality and religiosity. Thank you.